Good morning. This is Greatest Hits Radio. Now, as we know, at 6 o'clock tonight, Wales enters a fire break period. And to discuss this with me, I'm really pleased to welcome and thank for joining us the First Minister, Mark Drakeford. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Pleased to be with you.
Well, no, thank you so much for joining us. Now we've heard fire break and we've heard circuit break and lockdowns. How different will this one be for us all?
Well, I'm afraid in Wales, because the coronavirus is circulating so fast and in all parts of Wales, that we have to have a period where we can turn the tide back. And it will look a lot like it did back in March and April of this year, because we wanted to keep the period as short as possible. And there's a trade-off here between length and depth. If you're going to keep it short, you've got to have it deep. And therefore, other than schools, where we are going to be able to allow primary schools to return in the first 2 years of secondary school, everything else, I'm afraid, will be an instruction to people to stay at home and minimize contact with other households.
And of course, this has been a really difficult decision for you, First Minister, and I understand that, but the timing is pretty rubbish, isn't it? Because it coincides with the clocks going back this weekend. It's going to be a really dark first couple of weeks of this winter period.
Well, I absolutely understand that. You know, when coronavirus first hit us, we had at least that small advantage that we were heading into the better time of the year as far as the weather is concerned, and now we're heading into the late autumn and the winter. The timing for us was very heavily influenced by half term. We're very conscious of the impact that all of this has on children and their lives, and we wanted to minimize the disruption. So the first week of our 2-week firebreaker, children will be home in any case, and that's how the timing is as it is here in Wales.
One of the things that's making people worried, you can understand this for all of us who live here in Wales, is that the Welsh Economy Minister, Ken Skates, has already been talking about there being a second one, or maybe this will be extended. We'll get to the end of this fire break period and suddenly it'll be extended. I mean, what comfort can you give people that that isn't going to happen?
There's no extension to this fire break period. It's a fixed period. I want to be clear with people about that. And we will not see by the 9th of November the positive impact that we think will come from the fire break. Again, I don't want people to feel that if they don't see the numbers of people going into hospital falling and all the other things already put right, that somehow the period has failed. What our modelers and our chief medical officer and others tell us is we'll see the benefit of this, but it'll be after the 2-week period, not during it, because people who are going to be in hospital in 2 weeks' time are already falling ill now.
How do you think then, I mean, do you think, for example, that the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, would need to sort of almost take your lead and do something similar in England?
Well, I think two things really. One is he did get the same advice as us. SAGE, the national committee that advises on this thing, was saying a month ago that a fire break period was the most effective way of bringing the R number down below 1 again. But on the other hand, I've got to recognise the Prime Minister in his English capacity. It's a far bigger place. The gap between the most affected and the least affected areas is far wider than it is in Wales. It's more complicated if you're dealing with hundreds of local authorities rather than the 22 that we work with here in Wales.
The great majority of people in Wales, you, your family, me, my family, and everybody listening to this will be adhering to the rules and following these guidelines from today. But the police are saying that some of these rules are unenforceable. I mean, how will you reconcile that?
Well, I've always said that if we end up having to rely on the police to make the coronavirus restrictions worked, it won't have panned out as we need it to. We do need, as you said, all those people in every part of Wales who want to do the right thing to make their contribution to this 2-week period. And then the police will, if they have to, will be able to deal with that very small number of people who knowingly, deliberately, intentionally set out to break the law. And they'll be very obvious to people because everybody else will be at home doing the right thing. And then if we have to use enforcement, that's what we will do. But enforcement is the last resort, not the first resort. The first resort is persuasion, information, drawing on that strong sense of social solidarity that people across Wales have shown over the whole of the coronavirus period.
And there's a curious thing, isn't it? There's almost an anomaly because in some parts of Wales now, people are locked into their own counties. Now, the rules for this fire break don't actually lock you into a county. It talks about travelling for good reason. How does it differ? Does that mean if you live, for example, in a county that's currently locked into itself now, that you can actually cross the border into another county from now on?
Well, you can travel to another county for the same reasons as you can at the moment. So it will be for work, for a medical appointment, a narrow range of things. What you can't do is to say, oh, I fancy taking a bit of exercise in a different part of Wales and travelling across Wales to do it. But one place where things are different, and it's almost the only way in things are slightly more liberal than they were before, is that a single adult household who up until now have been able to form an alliance with another household inside the county boundary will now be able to choose a household beyond the boundary. And I think that will help them. And I've had lots of letters, as I know others will have heard, from individuals saying, my family lives 2 miles across the border. It would be great if I could form my bubble with them. And now they will be able to do that.
So it's not all bad news. I mean, we look today as a very dark day, but in fact, there is some sort of, I would almost call it sensible understanding of the rules.
Well, that's what we've tried to do, where we are able to adapt them so they fit better with the way people live their ordinary lives. We've tried to do that. These are a very severe set of restrictions we're asking people to live with. There's no getting away from that. But it is for a very fixed and as short a time as possible. And then our ambition is it will get us all through to Christmas, still able to do most of the things that we want to do in our daily lives.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned Christmas because it is 9 weeks away. People are excited about Christmas, but also very nervous. There are people whose children may be at university or may live away and want to come home for Christmas. Can you give some comfort to those people that you're not going to cancel Christmas? You're not going to turn into the Grinch of Christmas. It's going to be actually a time we can enjoy as families.
Well, that's absolutely what we want to achieve. Christmas this year will not look like it has in Christmases for many, many years past. We will still all need to act in the knowledge that coronavirus hasn't gone away and that we have to be careful and do things in a way that doesn't get our own families into danger. But we want shops to be able to trade. We want people to be able to have a Christmas, even though it'll be a coronavirus Christmas rather than the sort we're used to.
And you mentioned shops and businesses, and I know your time is precious, First Minister, so I'll keep it as brief as I can. But you mentioned businesses. You have put in what some are saying is a generous package of financial measures together with the UK government. And my question is, do you think businesses will actually go down because of this period now that we're entering from 6 o'clock today?
Well, there are businesses in Wales who are under enormous stress and who are close to the edge. And I can't offer 100% guarantee that everybody will survive the next difficult period, but our money is being invested to make sure that businesses who have a successful future ahead of them can survive the coronavirus period, so that in 2021, when, as we hope, things will begin to be different, they will still be there, able to pick up from where they were back in 2019. 2020 is a difficult year for us all and a really challenging year for businesses. We want to make sure that they're there for when the good times begin to happen again. They can start to trade, they can start to make livelihoods, they can start to generate the economic activity that sustains us all.
Well, I think that's a really encouraging sign that we can all see light at the end of the tunnel. It's not easy. I know as ministers and as politicians, you're used to putting your head above the parapet, but we certainly appreciate you coming on here today. I love the fact that you've done so. You must come back soon and hopefully, talk to us again. And as there's a clue in the name of our radio station, Greatest Hits Radio, one of these days I want to talk to you about what your favorite songs are. So we'll turn it to a lighter mood very soon. That's the next time you're on.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for the invitation. Thanks for today. Look forward to being back with you again soon.
Thank you. First Minister Mark Drakeford, thank you for joining us on Greatest Hits Radio.